Hey Marta, how you doing?
Good, Vic. What's going on?
Oh, not too much. I heard through a little birdie told me that we're into modern day marine season. I actually let me say it wasn't a bird because it's way too cold outside for a bird to actually, but maybe I got a tweet or something. I just get a disconnect. But yeah, we're in modern day marine season now, right?
We are in modern day marine season. And if I actually woke up last night, true story. I woke up last night thinking about my to-do list for modern day marine. So it's just so your listeners know, I'm the Marine Corps Association's lead planner for modern day marine, and the to-do list in my brain is like, on constant. So I
Yeah,
woke up. So that's how I know. Birdies or no birdies, I know because I woke up in the middle of the night sort of dreading my
yeah.
to-do list for modern day. It's right around the corner and we are pumped.
Yeah, your brain is just one really long PowerPoint presentation. You're just thinking in slide decks at
It's
this point.
it's really it's yeah. So between now and Showtime, Expo time on April 28th this year, that's pretty much what I'm going to be thinking about. What I'm going to be thinking about. Well, and you're going to be there too. Scuttlebutt's going to be there.
There are. Yeah, no, this is it's so rad. I love the way that Emerald has set us up. The location is great. Obviously, being on the showroom floor for something, that what the Marine Corps is doing here, the Marine Corps Association, the Marine Corps League, everything that's coming together. It's there's an audible and an emotional buzz from just being on the floor. So it's so fun. And just being able to talk to the guests that we have and just snatch some people off the showroom floor, like, hey, you look interesting. Let's have a chin wag or whatever. So fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah. So to your Scuttlebutt listeners, swing by the Scuttlebutt podcast booth and maybe you'll be interviewed. Maybe Vic will snatch you up.
Yeah. If you make eye contact, there's a good chance you're getting on a microphone. Um, so we're looking at April 28th through May 1st. Is that correct?
Through April
Oh,
30th. It's
30th.
a
Okay.
3-day, yep, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at the Walter E. Washington Convention Center. And this is our fifth year up in DC. So if you're an old crusty Marine, you might remember the muddy boot days down. You don't even actually even have to be that old to remember the old muddy boot days down in Quantico. But we moved up to the convention center 5 years ago and we haven't looked back. It's been fantastic. We're able to do so much more with that space that it's really remarkable. This year we have about seven additional conferences and symposia adjacent to modern day marine. So we have, like we have the log comms hosting an AI symposium and a hackathon. We have UAS, counter UAS symposium that's interacting with symposia. We have the Reserve Leadership Collective that is gathering reserve officers to talk about the future of the reserves. I mean, it's really becoming what we envisioned it to be when the commandant moved it up there, which is a place for learning and thinking and future thought. It really truly is doing that. I'm so excited, so excited. 5 stages.
Yeah.
We've got,
No,
yes,
it's
it's great.
the amount of Tetris skill that went into putting the showroom floor together is really, really impressive. And all of the events are so cool. Key leader engagements, like you said, all of the symposiums, the events, and there's a new term now for what we were doing.
Oh, Small Business Industry Day, and now it's
Yeah,
Marine Corps. Yeah, it's contracts industry day. You know what's really great about it is that we have something for everyone. If you're a young Marine officer or a young Marine just kind of getting into it and wondering where you want to go with your MOS, we probably have something on the floor for you to handle and explore,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or if you want to know how to handle your career, we've got Manpower and Reserve Affairs there. They're gonna, they're exhibiting. If you're wondering about the future of the Marine Corps strategically, we've got briefs for that. I mean, we really are this nexus of information for Marines. And then, leaders, senior leaders and defense industry partners. I mean, that's where they go and they show off their wares and they say, hey, look, you wanted this widget with this little doodad. That's the extent of my
No, that's technical. I think that's right off a lot of the, the
Yeah,
doctrinal
out of the
comics.
manuals. Yeah. In fact, yes, the widget with the doodad. Um, I'm married to an active duty Marine, and he loves to go because uh, he- the briefs alone are great. Like you'll hear from EWS students, command and staff students, staff and CI Academy students. They will come and do their TED Talks on their research projects. It's great information. It's phenomenal all the way around. I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too.
Anxious, but excited.
And for all of those who are just as excited as us, we can start registering now, right?
Holy cow. Yes. Registration's open. And let me tell you, if you've ever been to Modern Day Marine and have registered before, we have an entirely new experience for you. It is so smooth and seamless. You're going to love it. So yeah, registration's open now. Get on there and register. We'd love to see you.
And if you're active duty, it's free of charge, right?
Free of charge. Free to active duty and military spouses.
Yeah, that's what I'm telling. Price is right. Price is
The
right.
price is right. Free 99.
That's right. So, yeah, come on, Walter E. Washington Convention Center in D.C., April 28th through the 30th. And yeah, come say hi. I'll be there. So come by the booth and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Vic. Yeah, sounds great. See you then.
See you then.
Hey, Scuttlebutt listeners. Welcome to episode 229. This week, we bring you another installment of Semper Cinema in reviewing the documentary The Last 600 Meters, detailing the battles of Fallujah and Najaf during Operation Iraqi Freedom. Released last year, The Last 600 Meters chronicles the two deadliest battles of the Iraq War, Najaf in the south against the Shia Mahdi militia, and Fallujah in the west against Sunni insurgents. Both battles occurred in 2004, and the interviews for this documentary were recorded in 2007. Due to internal issues at PBS, many of which have been revealed to be political, it was shelved until last year. We mentioned this dynamic in our review, but mainly focus on the specifics of the film, such as the narrative style and cinematic art, and how well the filmmakers use these tools to tell the story. Another controversy surrounding the release of the film is its use of graphic combat footage, including the deaths of U.S. service members, so we also dive into the ethics of depicting graphic imagery and the moral decisions that go into it when trying to be authentic in illustrating the savagery of war. This is episode 229.
Howdy, y'all. This is William. We are here at MCA Scuttlebutt doing another Semper Cinema. I have two enthusiastic young individuals with me. First off, Vic Rubel.
I appreciate the young part. I really do.
Who else is in here? I don't know.
Yeah. But thank you for having me.
And second off, you just heard her lovely voice, Nancy.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Lovely. Always excited to do a Semper Cinema. And today we're doing...
With us youngsters.
That's
Yes.
right. A couple of young people like
Us glue
ourselves.
sniffers.
To be fair, Vic and I have the grayer hair in here, so...
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I have the assistance of a top-notch colorist, so.
Beautiful. Anyway, so we're here to do The Last 600 Meters. It is a film directed by Michael Pack. It came out in 2025, so late last year. But however, there's a bit of a story behind it. It was filmed previously, was originally slated to be released in PBS, what was it, 2006 or 2007?
They recorded it. They've recorded interviews in 2007, so yeah, it would have had to have been either that year or the year after.
Yes, but it was delayed because of political issues within PBS and came out just recently in 2025. The premise of the film, it was in 2004, America fought the two deadliest battles of the Iraq War, Najaf in the south against the Shiite militia, and Fallujah in the west against Sunni insurgents. And this film is a documentary film. It combines primary source material, including footage and film from these three battles, there's two in Fallujah, one in Najaf, as well as interviews conducted with Marines in the immediate aftermath of these two battles. That's where sort of the nexus of this film comes from. So starting off, as we do always with our Semper Cinema, let's go ahead and do your Amazon review. Out of how many stars are you giving this film and why? We'll kick it off with Vic, because you just breathed first.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I try to stay alive with the breathing thing, but that also probably signifies I'm ready to speak. So I kind of struggled with this, knowing we were going to do a Semper Cinema and understanding the format. my initial reaction was I'm having a harder time separating some of the ethical decisions that were made in the making of this film, vice the actual narrative of what they were trying to achieve. But so if I can divest the two, I would give it probably a 4.6 out of 5 stars. But I do have a real hard time, and we'll obviously get into it much later, but some of the decisions that were made, I think, kind of crossed some of the lines and weren't, not necessarily, wouldn't say that they were gratuitous, but I don't think that they were necessary. They exceeded what was needed to properly, get to the heart of the narrative. And so if I were to combine the two, I'd probably only give it a 4 out of 5. But from a narrative, just a filmmaking standpoint, probably 4.6.
Vic, you're so good. I mean, no, I say that I'm not being a smartass for a change. If you
this feels weird,
listeners, if you could see me right now, I've got the most closed off body language there is possible because I was very apprehensive to come in this morning and talk about this film for the reasons that you just mentioned.
Well, this can't just be like get along, gang, and just we love every film that we see. Let's have a little,
I know,
grit in our discussion.
But it's also, I also have a little imposter syndrome going on, I guess, about whether or not it's my place to weigh in on some of this. I'm not a veteran. I wasn't there. I didn't serve in combat. But I do happen to know certain things that you alluded to, Vic, about the motivation and so forth and other behind-the-scenes things that make it very, very, really impossible for me. I'm just not good enough at separating the two. And, I know through a trusted source, if it's okay for me to throw that, just jump right in.
Yeah, Mr. Trusted Source.
We've got no journalistic integrity in this room.
Yeah,
Mr. or Mrs. Trusted Source.
A source who chooses to remain anonymous. That the parents of the Marine who was killed and all that was depicted in this.
In the Najaf battle,
yeah. Yeah, in this film. They were not given any kind of a heads up that, oh yeah, by the way, more than 10 years after this was supposed to be released, get ready, you're going to, here it comes with footage of your son lying there on the ground taking his last breath. And so, I have a lot of problem with that. I almost feel it's hard for me to separate the two things because what we do here at the Marine Corps Association, specifically with Leatherneck and with Gazette and on this podcast, is we're telling stories. We're telling Marine stories. And I want to believe that was the motivation for making this film. But I don't know. I don't know that. I don't really know the reason why it wasn't released when it was supposed to be released. Doing some background for this recording today, I stumbled across an interview that was published on Saturday, and director, was it Michael Peck? Mm-hmm. He said he doesn't know he has no idea why it wasn't released then. Well, I don't believe he doesn't know why it was released when it was made, but I'm not going to call him a liar. So if I had to give it a number, I'm really hard-pressed to give it a number. I guess I'm going to have to go 2, just because I am incapable of separating my emotions from the rest of it. So there you go. There's my weakness.
Okay.
So
we found her Achilles heel.
We found it. Great. All right. Well, throw my hat in the ring. I have to give it 3.5 stars out of 5. My reasoning is probably entirely different from others, and I think I may be the lone man in the room for some of the ethical discussion we're about to have, which is fine. My issue was stylistic choices made throughout the film that I feel helped people could potentially get lost in the narrative, understanding the sort of bigger picture, who, what, when, where, why. Don't need to spend a lot of time on doing that, but having a better context for understanding what's going on, the different pieces, and also having done a film on Fallujah.
Right. I will say this before we dive into this one. I even commented to my wife. I said, I think William did a better job at least on the Fallujah piece.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, thank you, Vic. Anyways, go check out our film on Fallujah on YouTube.
Shameless plug.
Please, for the love of God, check it out. Again, I think it does a decent job, though, telling the stories, and I think it's taking great advantage of the interviews that were conducted in the immediate aftermath. Now, which something we may discuss later is there's obviously an issue with eyewitness firsthand accounts. There's good and bad context that can come with this of truly getting like the real history versus the truth versus someone's truth, which I think we will definitely discuss coming up going forth. So my second question, now that we've sort of given our Amazon reviews, is who is this film made for and why?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Again, I'm having a hard time sort of nailing that down. It wasn't totally obvious to me as far as I understand. Michael Peck or Pack? Pack. Michael Pack is not a veteran. He's cut his teeth almost his entire professional career, the way I understand it, in the public broadcasting sphere, mainly in the education realm. It was commented before we started recording that he's probably forgotten more about public broadcasting than many people know. So he's a veteran, but just not of the military, not a uniform veteran. So I do wonder, and you alluded to it, Nancy, like once it gets shelved and we are a decade removed from these battles, why the need to put it out now? So who then is it for? Is it a way of offering catharsis to those who fought in the battle and who participated in this, that them being so vulnerable and discussing it was he didn't want that, their sacrifice to go completely just to be shelved and collecting dust. It's also interesting to me that I think even though many of the people interviewed are still in uniform at the time of the interview recording, I don't think this wasn't endorsed by the Marine Corps. I think once the Marine Corps saw it, they kind of distanced themselves a little bit from it. So yeah, all right, really long way of saying I'm not sure who this was for. As a veteran, not of these battles, but of the global war on terror, there were some things that resonated with me. My wife even asked as we were watching, like, hey, how are you doing? And I was like, I'm actually doing all right. And then at almost the very end, they just show a still picture of a Marine with a little boy, and I fucking lost my shit. And you just never know. But so in that way, I think it did speak to veterans, but I think in another way, it spoke to civilians, and not even civilians, not the Gen Xers who were growing up, if you will, as young professionals during this time period, but for the millennials, the Gen Zs, and the Gen Alphas, who maybe these battles are a paragraph in their history book, if it's even mentioned at all, and just to remind people that, like, even in this digital era and this era of massive technological advancement and proliferation, war is fucking awful. And it's horrible, and this is what happens. No matter what, the nature of war will always be this, regardless of how much the character of it changes. So I think it's trying to speak to both demographics.
Okay. What about you, Nancy?
I don't know. Here, this is ambivalent day for Nancy. Who did he make it for? I don't know. I guess the idealist in me wants to believe that his intent and his purpose was storytelling, capturing that history while it was still fresh in people's minds, and educating the American public. I mean, because clearly his intent was for it to be a PBS project. So then you have to think about, okay, who watches PBS? What's that demographic? And I just have to assume, knowing those pieces of information, that that's who the intended viewer was. The part where I get a little skeptical or frustrated is what we talked about earlier, the fact that it wasn't released for so many years. And then I say to myself, okay, so isn't it curious that PBS decided that they were going to release this right on the eve, or was it either right before, in conjunction with the Marine Corps' 250th birthday. So I kind of felt as if it was a little bit of a
November, December timeframe,
jump on the bandwagon, and then this is a little. I'm gonna really go for it here, and say, I also find it curious that it was jump on the 250th bandwagon, and also look at the even bigger picture about funding for public broadcasting, and so I have some.
You're putting your tinfoil hat on a little bit.
Oh, totally put my tinfoil hat on. How does it look?
It's
It's better than my naturally graying hair.
Yes.
I mean, I'm an idealist, but I'm also a cynic. So
you're an idealistic cynic?
Oh, for sure.
That's fair.
Or cynical idealist.
Yeah, I'm a very cynical idealist, and I believe that the original audience was your standard PBS viewer. That's what I think.
So I very much agree with both you in many regards. I want to dig into a little bit. Supposed to come out, pretty close to, I think maybe 2009 was something, the date that Colonel Woodbridge said, and before this interview,
We were still very much in the fight.
Very much in the fight, and he said the politics involved was that, Obama was in the process of trying to withdraw us from Iraq. And there's some people in the government who are worried that this sort of press would be detrimental to the administration as this is occurring, which explains the delay behind it. So I think it's difficult determining who the intended audience is, considering the fact it was meant to be released in the midst of this conflict, hot, fresh, in the minds of the American public, as well as people serving. Now that it comes out, I'm more sympathetic to Michael Pack probably certainly than Nancy is. My idea is, if I was a director and I put my heart and soul into this project and it was delayed for political reasons, not on the merit of what you've actually created, but because of external forces putting pressure on PBS, I'd be pretty miffed. Trying to get this out at every opportunity. That being said, I do agree with you in the respect where, absolutely, coincides with Marine Corps 250. PBS has, their roughly center-left bias, and they're trying to get a greater appeal and support given recent political funding issues with PBS, and putting a something out there that might pull people from different sides of the political spectrum than they usually target for is certainly, there's certainly obviously money involved with this. It's the nature of filmmaking. So I think it's timing now. I would imagine broad audience interested in American geopolitics and military. I don't know if a Marine Corps audience specific, but maybe just general interest audience. So we've been teeing up some drama. Nancy, tell us a little bit about what your source had to say about this film. Let's talk a little bit about the ethical the ethical points of releasing a film such as this, especially in this era.
Well, I'm not really at too much liberty, really, to say too much.
That's fine.
And I don't know. I gotta tread lightly. Basically, what I said early on, that it was kind of a surprise. There was no. And I don't know the behind the scenes of what happened at PBS or with the director and the producers. I have no idea. I have no knowledge of any of that. I do know that my source told me that it was not known to the family of the Marine whose death is depicted in that project. They did not know, and they were kind of alerted to that fact by my source, so that it wouldn't catch them off guard. I'm trying to imagine how jarring and upsetting it could be to not know that you were going to see that, and then there it is on your TV screen. So my source gave the parents a heads up so that they would at least be aware of it. And I know my source did not have a lot of good things to say about the fact that it was kind of a complete surprise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it does make it very suspicious when that in presenting that information to the family, the risk of them saying you can't show that, it changes, I would imagine, a lot of the dynamic of what's going to be depicted there. Now, where I would argue, and my beef ethically on this is, I don't think it did as much work. And granted, this is coming from a veteran of this war, so maybe I am completely desensitized to it all, and having something that is that unfiltered, unedited, is showing someone in real time like that does have the visceral effect he was shooting for. I don't think it was necessary. I thought it was excessive. I think you do the storytelling and you get to the heart of the narrative without having to show those things. I know in the beheading of, and I'm drawing a blank on the name, but the American that they show was one of the big things leading up to Fallujah, was his beheading. The depiction, the really graphic depictions of the contractors. Now, in understanding, I remember at the time that most of the news outlets weren't being very ethical either. They were showing a lot of that stuff with just a quick blurb, like, hey, here's disturbing images. And then you look at it like, fuck, that's way more than disturbing. But again, it does get to the feel of what the Marines were going through at the time, what the nation was going through at the time. And this is a positive of what he was doing, is I really enjoyed the lack of narration. That really the ones telling the story were the Marines, providing their accounts. With the editing in there, you didn't have to have someone basically telling you what to think and how to feel. The Marines were doing a very good job of that. And so because they were doing such a good job, I didn't feel like you didn't have to crank up the graphic nature of it to 11. You could have gotten away with a 6 or 7 and still been effective and have it still be and still have it enhance the narrative.
Well, and I also want to jump back in, and again, I'm really trying to choose my words carefully, but it's also my understanding that, and I think, William, you alluded to it at the beginning of our discussion, that memories aren't always 100%
They're the worst.
crystal clear. And so it is my understanding that there are some different viewpoints about what was or wasn't done to attempt to resuscitate the Marine that I was speaking about.
On that point, I'll jump in a little bit, and then I'll sort of talk about my opinion on the ethical nature of character of this film. Is that's the issue that we have with relying on firsthand accounts. I remember there's a big historical discussion on the Band of Brothers, both the book and the series, and how 80-year-old Dick Winters is telling the story versus actually going through the reports and seeing what happens. There's a bit of a discrepancy, and so really what we're getting though is in the immediate aftermath of this film, in the immediate aftermath of these battles for this film, Marines telling it how they saw it, which again is their truth, may not be the truth. Now, rewinding a bit to sort of capture what I view as I think some of the ethical problems of this is I hold a very different stance. Full disclosure, never served in the Marine Corps. God willing, will never serve in the Marine Corps. Have had family who serves in the military and in the Marine Corps. Was young and had family go fight in these conflicts. And I'm also a historian and a filmmaker myself. And I have this idea that whether, when you step on these yellow footprints or when you join the military, you've more or less submitted yourself to history. For instance, going back in time, do you think when in 1862, when Matthew Brady had his photographic show of the dead at Antietam, did he get any permission from anyone to do that? There's a picture series after the Battle of Corinth where they actually can identify a Confederate officer who was killed dead on the field. He's wearing body armor. Was his family's permission asked? Did I ask Mohammed al-Assad's family when I shown his bloody blown up corpse on the film that I made? No. So I think to some degree when you're in a historical event, you're in a historical event. You are part of history, and so now I don't know to what effort these what disclosures they had when they contacted family members of this when it was planned to be originally released versus now. That's lost to us, and certainly we could interview other people to get that. But I think to some degree, whether you like it or not, you have to accept that when you partake in a historic event, you're now part of history.
But to what extent, though? So I'm not. I think
no push back, Vic. Come on.
I think you have a good point, though. But at the same time, I feel like in the cases that you gave, people are dead. Information wasn't as prolific as it is, and in the case of what you were talking about with your movie, you're reaching out. You'd have to go global, right? I mean,
I'm not going to Iraq, Vic.
Yeah. There's a lot of, but when you're here at home. And also, you were pulling from public. You were pulling from public. You were
partially public, but partially.
But you were given permission from the folks who provided you that stuff. I think it might be a little bit different when you're talking. I don't know. I think it's a little different.
Well, when preparing this statement, I had to ask myself the question. Yeah. How would I feel if it was my father who was, dead or bloody, or I have my sister and my brother-in-law are in the army? How would I see if I see something today and dead or bloody, or God forbid, I somehow end up in a historical situation and then my blown apart corpse? And I truly, truly don't know how I would respond. I try to give myself a fair shake on this, and I've come to view, I think, to not be a hypocrite, that well, I have to admit I may be hypocritical in the situation. I may not be. I don't know until it would actually happen. But in the long story of history, is it going to matter to me how angry I feel about myself or someone I love or care about being shown dead? Or is it going to matter that there are stories being told 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years later?
But and to that point, then, where I'm at a crossroads is that story being told effectively and in the way that the storyteller wants it to be told without the graphic nature of the imagery? And if you're looking at it and you're getting the firsthand accounts and you're putting it all together, and you're like, this just isn't landing. I've got to use the movie. Or I've got to use the imagery. Are you starting with the imagery and then having the narrative back? I guess, what's the starting point?
So
what's the end?
When I was making the film, my favorite part was when I was actually able to match photos or images or video with actually people who were speaking. Right. That photographer you had on and did the segment on about what he was doing in Fallujah. And it's one thing, to go through endless B-roll and see cool stuff, but I don't know actually where some of this B-roll is. We may never know. And so to be able to actually connect, footage, story. My favorite was when I was actually doing it was the Okinawa one where it's the death of a tank, where the tank's upside down burning. There's people trying to break in and save the
Death Square too, yeah.
And another group of family survivors who I never asked permission to do that. Anyways, though, I think the director's he's seeing the footage, he's seeing the photos, he has the narrative, he has people who are there talking about that specifically. That's authenticity. There's, and well, Nancy's obviously optimistic, cynical, or
you're idealist.
Cynical.
I'm not optimistic about it.
Yeah, no, really. I'm very cynical, and. Yeah, an appropriate quote-unquote trigger warning for types of films. But man, war is hell. It's supposed to be. And dumbass millennials such as myself. Sorry, I owe my wife $1. I have a swear jar thing with her. Dumbass millennials such as myself or other people in my generations don't see how awful this thing is, and we don't see the mistakes our previous generations made. And it needs to be awful and ugly. Remember, there was a time at the aftermath of the Battle of Tarawa. What was it? Life magazine had this big controversy whether or not they're going to show Marine dead on the front of the magazine or in the pages of it, and went all the way up to FDR. FDR says people need to know what the cost is.
We had Douglas K. Daniel on speaking about censorship in the Marine Corps.
So let me jump in here a little bit. First of all, after we're finished recording, I have some updates for you on the tank footage and that story that we ran in Leatherneck. We talk about that later. The other thing is we have to deal with this all the time in Leatherneck because we've got those kind of photos, and we have had situations where the decision was made, hey, you need to get in touch with the family members and let them know that we're about to publish an article about, their deceased loved one, just so it doesn't catch them off guard. We can't do it every time, and I'm not saying that the story is told a different way to gentle the blow, because how do you gentle that blow anyway? But just to have the decency as a human, just to have the decency to let somebody know, if you have that opportunity, to say, hey, this is coming. You can choose to avoid it if you want. I'm not saying not use the footage if it's important to tell the story. I'm saying just to take that opportunity to give someone a heads up and say, I just want you to be aware that this is going to happen.
I guess at the risk of shifting it into the more general than the specific, there were a couple instances that I took umbrage with that weren't quite as visceral because it wasn't specific to an individual. One of them was they showed, and I believe it was Najaf, and before we had the fully up-armored Humvees, you just patchwork on all of your stuff, and clearly this was a Humvee that was meant for carrying gear, and they had welded some walls along the sides so they could use it as a troop transport, and it was open on the top. Anyhow, they're talking about the IED threat, so it does match with the narrative and with the actual the narration, air quotes, the first-hand account of the people that were there. But we didn't need to see that Humvee with 5 or 6 U.S. service members in it blow up. And you're like, I just watched half a squad of U.S. service members die. Another one was they were talking about, at night out come the feral dogs. I don't feel like I needed to see a dog carrying off a human leg. Like, it was.
Agree.
It was just like, I didn't need it cranked up to 11. 6 or 7 would have been more than fine to still have it nested and to still get that feeling of how ugly and terrible war is.
And agree. And all the time, we have so many photographs, and we've got to make those decisions. And I am not necessarily on the side of publish all the
because then
gory
it starts
images.
To look
it's gratuitous.
Even if it's not. And I'm not accusing him of it. But it starts to walk like a duck and starts to talk like a duck when you see it in the ways that it was. So even in the case of that Marine that was killed, if you felt like if that decision was made because it's absolutely, like you said, it's absolutely critical to the narrative, okay. But then it happens again, and then it happens again, and then it happens again, and you're like, what the fuck, man? Like, because it also runs the risk of desensitizing you to the other stuff.
I disagree. I mean, I think when you're pressing play on the streaming service, it's a war film. It's not supposed to be sanitized.
Yeah.
And there's different degrees of war film. There's some films we've seen like World War II. It's a very top down, generals making decisions. Yeah. You'll see some B-roll. I can understand why those may not be gratuitous, but when you have a very in the trenches story driven based off of individual accounts.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth.
There's a spectrum. There's a spectrum of military documentaries, and I think this is on the more extreme side of it. Doesn't mean I don't think there should be more extreme sides of the story told. And there is, you're right, there is a fine line between watching gore porn versus a right. realistic, authentic. And I feel that this didn't tread the line. I think it was solidly in a more professional academic sense, showing how cruel it is. I mean, again, as someone who sees drone footage with Chief Keef being played on my ex on a very regular basis, I need to unfollow some accounts. But there is a professionalism to this that isn't gore porn. But again, I mean, I wasn't there, and I have this, not sick craving, but genuine desire to see how terrible this thing is because I'm a voting American and I want to see how terrible it is.
I guess from my perspective, I never want to become the type of editor who is not deeply affected by photographs of dead bodies, no matter whether they're enemy dead bodies or American dead bodies. And I need to, every time I never want to be an editor who says, yeah, that is a cool picture, because we have some very in the trenches firsthand accounts, and some very in the trenches historically accurate accounts that we publish in Leatherneck all the time. And very often there are photos that are vivid, graphic, but I never ever want to become an editor who's like, that is a cool picture. Yeah, we're running that. I want every one of those pictures to shock me to my core, and I want to look at them and I want to remember that's somebody's son, daughter, husband, father, wife, whatever. I always want to look at them and have to really, really think critically. Is it that important that I published this photo with this article?
Yeah. And an example where I thought it worked well was when they were talking about the Hell House. And most of that was stills. I think all of it was stills. But in every photo, because of the nature of what was happening, is you had a dead insurgent on the floor the entire time. And then they had to start dealing with the guys that were in that, top-down, dug-in position. There is some B-roll of them trying to break the
door down,
the windows, bars on the windows. But yeah, I mean, so in that case, I thought it was effective, and I thought it enhanced the narrative without being gratuitous.
Well, it's interesting he mentioned that. Do you think that's maybe part of our American bias, where it's like we see blown up Islamic extremists,
I was going to say,
and then they're shot and they're dead. But
you see that really almost iconic image of Sergeant Major Castle coming out, he's
bloody holding the pistol.
Yeah, his almost entire lower extremities is covered in blood. You see many of those guys. I was going to talk about one of the tank issues, and I think it was on the time when that Mass Sergeant was talking about how much it stunk. But while he's doing that, they're showing them pulling, tank, Marines out of the tank who were wounded. And again, I thought that really enhanced the narrative because you think of the tank as something that's indestructible. Quite honestly, and we used to joke around about this all the time when we were talking about going out on the MEU, is you have a platoon of tanks that are attached to the MEU. In most countries, those 4 tanks could take over the country. Not only because of the platform itself is so... It is a strategic level thing, but the operators themselves are so proficient that even if there were other main battle tanks in that country, they're not going to really stand a chance against a platoon of 4 tanks being operated by Marines. But to show that, dude, every guy they pulled out of there was fucked up. It's this is the type of fight that we're in, where tank operators are, in the same. Have the same level of threat as the infantrymen next to them. And so, again, there is probably a bias for sure. And, I was lucky enough in all of my, not all of my deployments, but the vast majority of my deployments that I had a very minimal amount of casualties due to enemy action. So most of the stuff that I saw, we did to them. And it's not that it makes it easier, doesn't make it palatable.
Okay.
And so I am desensitized in that way to saying, seeing a dead insurgent is not as I don't have as visceral a reaction as I do seeing. And you can just see when they did the numerical counts, the amount of American casualties is a fraction of what we inflicted upon the enemy. And so that also is probably why it's still it still hits so home, because even with the amount of wounded, the amount of KIA we took directly in those engagements the immediate KIA was so much less than what we inflicted upon the enemy. That was a long one.
It's okay. No, this was a great discussion. We're getting on toward the end of this as we're quickly about to hurry out to do another meeting, but I just want to say, everyone, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Semper Cinema. If you feel so inclined, you can go on PBS and check out the film, The Last 600 Meters.
It's on Amazon too. You get
it is
free.
And we're talking about this earlier. I'm kind of disappointed they used the term meters instead of yards, because what are we? We're not a bunch of limeys. These are United States Marines.
Well, but in that case, when you're looking at your map, it's in meters too. So.
Are you that? You guys
Because a click is 1,000 meters.
Okay, Redcoat. All right.
Also, can I just add, hey, if there are any movies that you listeners want us to review for Semper Cinema,
good idea.
Let us know.
Yeah, give us a like, give us a follow, give us a comment.
And
tell all your friends.
Yeah, don't give us slam dunks. Give us movies where we can yell at each other. That's always more fun.
Yeah, and it's got to be as much as I would love to do a movie review of Big Trouble in Little China, we've got to keep it at least military focused, specifically Marine Corps focused. Yeah.
All right, thanks much. Tune in.
Scuttlebutt is a production of the Marine Corps Association. You have heard the voices or contributions from Major Vic Rubel, USMC retired, Nancy Litchman, William Truding, and our guest. Ty Frazier is the editor, sound engineer, and technical producer. The Marine Corps Association is not an agency of the U.S. government. The opinions expressed in this episode are the personal views of the participants and do not reflect the official position of the United States Marine Corps, the Department of Defense, or the Marine Corps Association.